Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Suzette Speaks Show. I'm Suzette Speaks. I want to welcome you. I broadcast live throughout the week, but especially on Saturdays. I'm co-hosted by my partners in crime, Jamaicans.com, on their Facebook page. If you're watching there, say hello. I'm so happy that you're here. It's been a minute. I'm appreciating all the love you always show me. But if you would please, first and foremost, hit the like button. I want more people to be able to see the stream. Of course, a little CP time. Don't be mad, guys. Don't be mad. But I'm talking some seriousness today because I turned on my news yesterday, y'all, and I saw one of the most unbelievable shifts happening here in the United States. And you guys, I know I'm speaking to the diaspora. Again, like I said, we are co-sponsored today. But if you're watching, there are enough of us who are a part of the diaspora here in the United States where the subject matter I'm going to cover today covers a lot of people who, A, live in the U.S. or love someone who lives in the U.S. So if you're watching around the world, if you're into politics, if you just want to know what the heck's going on, this is the show for you. The Supreme Court of the United States has created such monumental shifts at the end of their term that we need to break it all the way down. I'm going to go over three major cases today. I'm going to talk about what happened with affirmative action. I know some people may not even understand what affirmative action means in the United States. Of course, it does not mean Black students taking the places of qualified white students. Oftentimes, it is mischaracterized as such. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about why this is going to affect how many Black doctors we see in the future, how many Black lawyers we see in the future. If you don't think this is going to have an impact on our society as a whole, oh, yes, it will. So we see an end to affirmative action in college admissions effectively. Then we're going to talk a little bit about what happened where a business owner brought a case, and I'm not even sure if this case should have been brought because it was premature to an actual injury to the plaintiff, and I'll break down what that means. But a lady basically who designs websites took her case all the way to the Supreme Court to say a Colorado law which said she had to serve everyone who sought web designing services. She said she had a religious objection. Hit the like button, you guys, if you're watching online. If you're watching on the YouTube side, you guys, welcome. It's been a minute. I'm glad you're here talking Supreme Court. But listen, she basically said, I have a religious objection, right, to serving same-sex couples. So she said there was a person who made an inquiry about her making a website for their wedding. She says, as a wedding website designer, she had a religious objection to this. And the Supreme Court sided with her on free speech basis, right? So it's not every business, but businesses who have are expressive in nature. And we'll talk about what that means. And finally, we're going to talk about what happened to the student loans. The student loans no longer are being canceled by the Biden administration. The Supreme Court ruled that, unfortunately, the Biden administration doesn't have that much power, y'all. This was me yesterday, quite frankly. I was frightened. I was sitting in front of the computer. I was sitting literally in front of the computer. Let me give you a more accurate. This is the flow of my emotions yesterday, let's say. So I was sitting in front of the television wondering if this was an accurate rundown of what was happening. I was so shocked by the monumental decisions that we saw that I was probably not the only one sitting in my office crying, trying to figure out what was happening, especially as it came to some of the cases that I just mentioned. This is a shift, you guys. This is why we keep talking about elections matter. Elections matter. If you're here in the United States, if you're living in the United States, whether you got here a couple hundred years ago or whether you just became a citizen or you are a part of the community, and you have the ability to vote, this is why elections matter. Because we're seeing a result of what, again, my emotion, this is me now. I've gotten over it. I have started to think about how we can create solutions for it. But again, we won't be able to feel the impacts until quite a few years down the road when it comes to specifically the affirmative action cases. And I'm going to, again, break down a few main points. Again, the U.S. Supreme Court had an amazing, tough, you might call it, landmark a culture changing week here with a few major decisions that were just released. We're going to go over why they may affect your life, your child's life, our community as a whole throughout here in the United States. Again, if you're watching from around the world, say what's up. Let me know how you feel. Again, I am semi in shock. I am still trying to digest every part of what took place during this last week of the U.S. Supreme Court term. And again, if you are into politics and if you know and you want to give your opinion on what exactly is happening here in America, please let me know. I want to welcome you. Hey, Sandy V. Law. It's great to see you, sis. Another attorney and sister-in-law here from Miami, girl. How are you, Sandy? Excuse me. Great to see me stream. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Life of Cash is in the building. Thank you so much for watching. I see you. Rose B. Thompson, South Florida Realtor. Hey, sis. Glad you were here. Salute, Doug. Salute, Andrew. Wagwan. I appreciate you. Good to have you here, sir. Always great to have my core viewers and supporters among those who are tuned in. If you're watching Team Replay, it's all love. If you're watching on the Jamaicans.com side, please hit the like button, comment if you will, and please share. Again, this is a very sensitive topic, and I think not only did I want to approach it while I had the time sufficiently, y'all, I've been working like crazy, but sometimes, things like this do just cause me to pause and really try to reflect on where we are going as a country, and can we recover? Like I said, less Black bodies literally in the top classes, in the top Ivy League schools. What does that mean for our community going forward? We know that certain positions in the U.S. government seemingly all come out of these very elite schools. And I think about how many people think there's just a plethora of Black students there. No, right now, in your average Ivy League school, top universities in the United States, African Americans only comprise 5 to 8%. And when we're looking at affirmative action, a lot of people think so many students are being kept out, and we're going to talk about the case and why it was a little bit different when an Asian American plaintiff is the people who, the coalition that brought this affirmative action case, and said there were Asian students that were being disproportionately affected by affirmative action. And we know, according to research, only about 1% of students who might have gotten in don't get in as a result of affirmative action. So we're not talking about even a reflection of the total amount of, according to the census, African Americans in the United States, which is about 14%. It's still only about 5%, depending on the Ivy League, to 8% that occupy seats in very top universities. And I want to dispel the misnomer that those students are somehow unqualified. These students are some of the best. Joy Ann Reid, if you know her, our Guyanese sister who comes on MSNBC, gave her personal testimony yesterday that she ended up at Harvard via affirmative action. Very high test scores, high SAT, high GPA. And the Harvard recruiter that spoke with her came all the way to her little small town in Denver and spoke to her about attending Harvard. And it was very interesting when she gave her personal testimony about this. Michelle Obama got into these, Yale that way. Clarence Thomas himself, we're going to get into brother Clarence Thomas. But they were excellent students to begin with, but may not have had the means or the opportunity because their parents didn't go to Ivy League. They come from a different economic background. If you are not from a household where your parents went to college, you're less likely to attend college, etc. But these are brilliant kids that are being allowed an opportunity. And why did we need it in the first place? Were those seats always given to Black students? We're going to get into it. I'm glad you're here. Hey, Jeff King says, I think Blacks will return to HBCUs. Interesting. Thank you for bringing up that possibility. But I always tell people there's a net effect to it because there is truth in what you're saying. If students are denied admission, as we've seen in California, they passed something like this in their state about 20 years ago. So we have data out of California of what happens when you are so-called colorblind, because we know it's not really colorblind. They're still looking at students based on a holistic view, but there is a net effect of what happens to those students who would have, with race being one of many factors, being admitted in some of these high-level schools, they end up going to probably schools in the next 2 or 3 tiers down. We know that impacts overall earning potential. We know jobs look at your resume and think, what school did you go to? It tells a lot about the individual. And over time, those students who were denied access in California, over time, their 20-year earning trajectory was much lower. So we got to look at what this means. Again, going to grad school, making it to the second degree was much lower. So if we already have a problem with the amount of representation in the medical field, in the legal field, in engineering, you name it, what's going to happen now when we know in states where this has already been the law, we've seen a remarkable decrease, even cut in half in terms of the students who are now admitted in those schools. So let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. I can't wait to hear what you have to say. What's good, DL? What's going on with the Supreme Court? Will we survive here in the United States? What does it mean? Who wins? Who loses? Is this good for the country? I want to hear what you have to say as we kind of talk about these landmark cases that occurred. Shout out again, Jamaicans.com. Big up yourself if you're watching on the Facebook side. If you don't know, I also have a YouTube channel, guys. Yes, I still have a YouTube channel, guys. And I will be doing some shows next week. Hey, back at it. Let's go. My Patreon community, I've missed you. I'm going to be at a conference next week, and I'm going to go live from a Democratic conference, you guys, here in Miami. I can't wait because this has got me fired up and ready to go. We have a lot of emotions around it. Like I said, immediately, I called my cousin. I was in tears watching the news as to what was happening via these rulings that are now basically, when it comes from the U.S. Supreme Court, it's the law of the land. To me, let me ask some questions while we get into the chat. Let me get into it. TMK, how are you? Good to have you. Michael James, your opinion. Thank you, sir. Says Asians have already received their reparation. Listen, we're going to see what the net effect is. We're going to talk affirmative action first, then we're going to get into now businesses being able to tell people they will not serve them based on freedom of speech grounds. That Colorado case is very eye-opening because people don't understand that this can be a slippery slope. A slippery slope. Hit the like button, y'all. Come on in, say hello, come through. We're going to do a full update, get my opinion as well. What's happening? If you don't know, the U.S. Supreme Court has finished its term with some mind-blowing opinions and rulings that have now changed the face of higher education for Black and brown people, because we know if it wasn't happening before affirmative action, probably won't happen now, that you're rolling it back. And you're basically gutting a college or university's ability to now use race as one factor for already qualified students. That's what you always miss. People think that they're somehow deficient. This is why we have to kind of break the myth and break the stigma. And I want to go over some of the history and what was argued in terms of these two cases. We're also going to talk about the Biden loan plan. Loan forgiveness, the Supreme Court has said, cannot be performed by the executive branch, only by the legislative branch. Even though the legislative branch, Congress, through the COVID act that they passed, gave the executive branch, the president and his cabinet, right, special powers during COVID to basically help people. They tried to use it to forgive how many trillion in loans, and the Supremes have said, I call them the Supremes, I should say the United States Supreme Court said, no, sir, this is no go. So you have conservative people on the right, as we call it, the Republican Party, are super happy with a lot of what's going on. You have weeping and gnashing of teeth on the other side. You have folks that feel like these Supreme Court justices, the 9 that sit and basically legislate, some would argue, from the bench, have too much power. Some people saying they're more powerful than their other co-equal branches. And how they interpret the law has a real effect on each and every one of us. So we're going to get into affirmative action. First and foremost, say hi, welcome. It's been a minute. I missed you guys. I'm glad to see you. I want your opinions on this. I probably will have time. I got to go somewhere after this, y'all, but to drop the link and let you speak up and speak out. But in the meantime, go ahead and hit the like button, please. If you want to support the stream, you know I have a Cash App. You can always support me. I appreciate it. Again, you will see me during the week if you're watching on Facebook, over on YouTube. So go over to YouTube and subscribe to the SuzetteSpeaks show. This is a Supreme Court update, you guys. We had to do it because the way colleges and the face of colleges is about to change, I don't think people really understand. And how that impacts society, because this is why we had to take action affirmatively in the past, because the halls of power, the access to certain jobs, the access to certain offices in the federal government were, I would say, wouldn't by law, by the 60s, before by law, there was open discrimination. But then afterwards, we have now, I would say, covert discrimination, or even maybe subconscious bias that plays out in everyday life. I'm not even talking about the historical, what should I say, the impacts of the inequitable, insufferable systems that our country was initially founded on. I'm talking about now. So yes, we can talk about the first couple hundred years of why many African Americans and those of us in the diaspora who have been grafted into the family by becoming U.S. citizens and now reap many of the benefits fought hard for by groups of our ancestors who stood up, let me get into it, Thurgood Marshall, and used the very same Supreme Court that we see rolling back certain rights to say we need to have an equitable society, and access to education is one of the things that makes a society more equitable. But we're about to see a change, you guys. I'm going to talk about, is diversity a necessity? That's what Harvard and the University of North Carolina argued, that they need to be able to, as one factor among many, a holistic view of a student, so that we can have more diverse college campuses that reflect what the country looks like, because there's a benefit, you could say, economically. Better trained people get better jobs and contribute to the economy. You could say in terms of understanding and unity in our country, tolerance, if you want to call it, and even acceptance. People coming from different walks of life benefit one another in terms of understanding each other. But now, college campuses will be less diverse. Let's get into it. Who made this happen? Our Supremes. Do you guys know who's on the Supreme Court? Anybody? These are some of the oh, wait, I forgot one of the main conservative justices. Most of the term here was determined by, and there are 9 total, 6-3. Actually, there's 5 here. We have Kavanaugh, Alito, Roberts, Gorsuch, and Coney Barrett. But y'all forgot one. Who did I forget, guys? Let me get into it. Andrew says, I feel that minorities might actually stand out more and create cases to justify their admission to school. You're going to have to be really good. Not that we weren't already. Because like I said, Joanne Reed set her GPA, etc. When she got to Harvard, she said her freshman year, she was questioned openly by white students that you don't belong here. You took somebody white seat, etc. And then she said it was very hard for her. She didn't like Harvard that first semester. And that she realized quickly that many of the black students were actually much smarter than the white students that were sitting there, who also had preferential treatment in admissions. Why? Some of them have legacy. Guess what? Black people in America can't have legacy because before 50s, 60s, we weren't allowed into white institutions. The top elite institutions didn't even allow black students. So how can I be a legacy if my grandfather was not allowed in? But that is an advantage to one group of people, and that you see still exercise, even though they removed the race as a factor. Legacy is one. We're gonna, come on, guys, let's get into it. Good afternoon, Juliet. Happy to have you. I'm missing one of the justices. Who am I missing on the conservative side? Y'all know him? Okay, wait, hold on. Y'all know him? Okay, yes. Sandy B, I love your opinion, says, in theory, it would be great to focus on HBCUs. My thing is, we have to remember in the United States, not all colleges are funded equally. So oftentimes, many of our HBCUs are private and therefore are more expensive. So if we don't have a state school option, for example, most states have an elite state school or a couple of state schools that allow us to pay public tuition instead of private costs for tuition. It's going to make a big difference as to who gets in, who can afford to go, and therefore who graduates. So there are some advantages, but we also have to look at costs. Most HBCUs are in the South. So if you live in another state, out west, in the Midwest, just the cost of traveling to a college out of state will have an impact on students. So it's going to be very interesting over the next 3 to 5 years what our college campuses look like. Good to see you, Scam Likely. Appreciate you being here. Sandy B. Law says, in reality, you should not be restricted from attending whatever institution you desire. This is true. But Sandy B, I'm going to add on. If we had equal access to these top universities, we would not have needed affirmative action in the first place. This is what people fail to understand, and this is what we're going back to. So as creatively as some schools have already said they're going to try to still meet the needs of diversity on a campus and having diverse graduates and having equal opportunity for people to get access to that level of education, that level of network, right? In California, once Proposition 209 passed, like I said, 20 years ago, voters in California removed any race-based admissions criteria for consideration. And we saw African-American numbers at the elite schools, UC Berkeley, UC Davis, University of California, Berkeley, etc., has never recovered, has been cut in half. And again, that makes a difference in terms of what kind of access to employment you have after. So we can say, oh, we could just go to another college. But this is why colleges, the top tier, are so coveted, because people in America know it matters what school you go to. The higher the college, the more opportunity. But now we're going back to a system which will have a net effect of less Black and less brown people sitting at the most elite schools in our country. So we're going to start seeing positions in our government, positions in private sector that are only going to be available to certain people because they graduated from the right school. Am I going too far? Y'all think, oh no, everybody's going to have the same opportunity. No, for your lifetime, we will make less if we go to a school that is not in the top tier. That is a fact, no matter what your race. But less Black people will have access. Y'all hit the like button. We're getting into it. Mr. Clarence Thomas himself, y'all remember that he was actually a beneficiary of affirmative action, and that's how he got into Yale, even though his test scores, like I say, affirmative action does not just take any and everybody. It allows the elite Black students that would be overlooked the opportunity to be considered, right? Joyanne Reed said they came and found her in her little, she said, a predominantly Black community in middle of nowhere, Denver. She was smart enough. She had the ability and the aptitude, but they would have never found her. Harvard would have never found her had they not had the mindset that, oh, we need to diversify the student body and look for highly talented students that need the opportunity to also be at the Harvards, be at the Yales, be at the Browns, and et cetera, et cetera. This will impact how our community looks for the future, y'all. My heart, when I tell you I was crying, sitting here like, this is wild. We're going to talk about Candace Owens. You guys know her. She's a conservative pundit. Let's see what she had to say. I took a couple of her quotes from Twitter. I'm going to get to it. Let me see what you guys are saying in the chat. Glad to have you here. Hit the like button, please. Suzette Speaks with the Supreme Court update, which I wish I didn't have to give you. But there's so much going on here in the United States that I want my people to be informed about. So I need you guys to please don't get fatigued. It's a crazy world. But this man here Let me read what Andrew has to say. I feel that the fact that many minorities have been acquiring more finances, and higher education at such a phenomenal rate, they wanted to move the cheese. Who is they? Andrew, not too controversial, but my brother gonna speak straight. Who's moving the cheese? Why are they moving the cheese? And this is the other part of it, guys, that I don't think is getting talked about, Andrew, is that among Black students, thank you for your point, and all opinions are welcome. Among Black students that go to college, people don't realize the single most beneficiary of affirmative action since it started in the 70s under Richard Nixon's administration is white women. They were not as represented. Now women outnumber men in school, in colleges, at universities in the United States. It was not so. So holding space for women, we've seen how it has benefited. And so we'll argue it just has changed the face of higher education. My point being, guys, when I look at the numbers of Black people enrolled in school, in college in the United States, 2/3 of them are women. So this will not only have an impact that will have a racial component, it will also impact gender. Black women make up 2/3 of folks who attend college. We're going to see a decrease in that. Let's get into the Supreme Court, guys. If you want to make a comment, welcome. It struck me, the contrast of the first Black person to serve on the United States Supreme Court, Thurgood Marshall, and the second one, Clarence Thomas, and how different their politics is. Rest in peace, Thurgood Marshall. Thank you, sir, for your contributions to the tapestry of the United States and making her a more perfect union and holding space for your brothers and sisters who were kept out of universities for a few hundred years. Now we have Mr. Clarence Thomas, who votes with the 6-3 majority on the conservative side, that says he's glad. This is a reversal of a case that was presented back in 2003 called Grutter. It's another hallmark case. That's when the Supreme Court justices at the time, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, was on there. Justice Souter was on there. Sandra Day O'Connor was on there about 2003, I believe it was. The Grutter case was the case that stood since, the last 20 some years. We've had affirmative action 40 plus years. And now they have removed it. And again, the precedent that it sets perhaps might have an influence in other areas of American life. Do you guys hear what I'm saying? We're talking college admissions now. This Supreme Court is willing to overturn 40 plus years of precedent since 2003, the Grutter case, and pushing what some would call a conservative agenda. It is interesting to see how far we've come from the very first Black man to serve on the United States Supreme Court, Thurgood Marshall, to where we are now, Clarence Thomas, solidly on the conservative side, arguing against affirmative action. So again, we saw this landmark ruling, the Supreme Court effectively eliminating affirmative action in any college campus across the United States. So there was one small loophole left by Justice Roberts, the chief judge of the Supreme Court, who wrote the majority of opinion. So after they make a ruling, they write, it's like almost 40 some pages, the total ruling. They're the people who win, the majority, the 6, writes in detail why they thought this was the way the case should have gone. And he said diversity is not a good enough idea. He said he believes that it is discriminatory, and any form of discrimination under the 14th Amendment, right, which says everybody should be treated equally under the law. That's the main gist of the 14th Amendment. Black people have used that amendment in fighting in the Supreme Court to say we can't have separate but equal. We can't have, they call that the 13th, 14th Amendment almost a second founding, right? Before we were a separated kind of racial apartheid, really is what we were experiencing in the United States from her birth, and the progression of slavery, the progression of Jim Crow. The Supreme Court did not think it, since the 70s, since the Bakke case, Bakke, look up that United States Supreme Court case, said it's not enough to say racial considerations should be made to atone for or make up for or correct the sins of the past. The United States Supreme Court rejected that in the 70s. So we have seen kind of like a slow rollback till 2003. They said it could remain for diversity interests. But now, and in her opinion, back in that case, in the Grutter case, Sandra Day O'Connor said there may be a time, rest in peace, she was a Supreme Court justice at the time. In her opinion, she wrote that maybe in 25 years, this won't be even needed. It's not 25 years yet, but they wiped it out. So the face of college campuses effectively has been changed. Guys, welcome if you're just joining. Topic today, Supreme Court update, talking about the major rulings that have come out that will affect American life in so many aspects. If you have a child going to college, if you have a loved one going to college, the justice that left a little bit of breathing room based on these rulings was the chief judge, in his opinion. And again, there are 9 of them, and the majority right now is conservative. And why I say it always is important to vote, please hit the like button, is that Donald Trump was able to appoint 3 very conservative leaning justices. So the makeup of the court, remember that these 9 people have lifetime appointments. Once they're appointed, they do not get removed. Several of them are only about 50. So technically, they will probably live another, God's willing, 20, 30, 40 years. So their conservative politics will have an impact for more than a generation. So presidents, this is one of the most critical powers a president has, which is to appoint an open seat on the Supreme Court. Now, some will go back and say, we're mad at Ruth Bader Ginsburg because she didn't retire when Barack Obama could have appointed her replacement. Some will be mad and say Merrick Garland, who was a nominee of Barack Obama, that the Republican House and Senate blocked from having a hearing, the Senate, excuse me, that we should have a Supreme Court justice named Merrick Garland. He's now serving as the Department of Justice. But there were so many things that could have prevented. And of course, the election of Donald Trump ultimately, with 3 open seats back to back, and each judge he appointed was conservative. Make no bones about it. That's why we see a reversal of Roe v. Wade. And that's why we see more of a, let's get to some of the so we have several members. Chief Justice Roberts is not on this. That again, from their Trump appointments, have now laid a framework for so many other issues to come forward, because more conservative or right-wing folks know they have a court that is more willing to upend what we call precedent. The way we were taught in law school is that the precedent stands, stare decisis. It's a Latin word. But these justices, even though we've had Roe since however many decades, overturned it. Even though since 2003, Grutter said, nope, we can have it as a factor, but you have to look at a student holistically. You can't just say, we're going to make a quota of how many of this or how many of that. Now we had a turnaround. An Asian American plaintiff said Asians are being capped at Harvard and Yale. They're mostly probably at maybe 20% max. And he's saying it's unfair to Asian students. That's what he argued. So this was very different. This wasn't a white plaintiff, which I thought was very skillful by the attorneys that filed this suit. They use another minority against another minority to say Asian people are suffering. Asian students have hope too. And they are losing seats because there are people who are taking their seats, even though they're super, probably at the top of the test taking scores, top of the GPAs, et cetera, et cetera. That's how this came about. And the court ruled in their favor. So while we are again trying to figure out how this will look in the near future, the majority of the court said this was where the direction we need to take. Again, the more conservative justices, 3 of which were just appointed by President Trump during his term: Alito, Justice Thomas, Justice Roberts, Amy Coney Barrett, Justice Kavanaugh, and Justice Gorsuch, wrote or voted in favor of removal of any consideration of race in the college admissions process. And then dissenting are the more liberal justices: Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, who was just appointed by Joe Biden, Sotomayor, Justice Sotomayor, and Justice Kagan. That's how most of these decisions are going to be decided. Those numbers 6-3. Oh gosh, let me let you know what Candace someone's had to say. Let's say hello. I appreciate you guys being here. Andrew adds, I do not like minorities becoming economically viable. This is going to shift Black wealth. I don't think people understand this. Juliet adds, Thomas is missing in action. That's a polite way of expressing that. Thank you. Hey, Chris Smokey, glad that you're here. Jeff, we're going to keep it civil, but yes, that's the one. That's the one. Some colleges will eliminate legacies too. They haven't yet, though. They haven't yet eliminated the legacy system, right? If your parents also, you have like a donor system. If your parents donate a certain amount of money to the alumni association, you have preference. There are all types of things that are giving other groups advantages, but they yet remain in place. So we have removed, my goodness, don't get personal. Thank you. Life of Cash says legacy donors, kids, and athletes. Exactly. That's the other protected, factor for consideration is also athletes get a preference. So everybody's not going to be playing sports to preserve the amount of Black people on the campus. So only athletes, that's what we'll see in terms of the Black student body. Again, at our most elite universities, it's only about 5 to 8% Black students anyway. So it's not this, whoa, they're all over this campus. They are underrepresented in terms of the U.S. population anyway. And now those provisions that made sure we were not overlooked, again, due to explicit bias or even implicit bias. People sometimes don't even realize they're weighing that student over that student. This can actually, you guys, open us up to a lot more litigation. And I cannot imagine how Black students are going to feel when they're on these campuses now going forward. It's going to be very interesting. I appreciate you, Robert B. You enjoying the show? Thank you, my darling. Glad you're here. Y'all hit the like button. Support if you can. Juliet adds, Clarence Thomas cannot walk in Thurgood Marshall's shoes. He's a shame to the Black race. Sad. Thank you for your opinion. Hey, Ebony X. Glad to see you. Hey, good to see you, doll. Miss AKA Lady in the building. She adds, legacy and donor programs have financial benefits to the school, so it probably won't go anywhere. That's why they don't want to touch it, even though it mostly benefits white students, right? But those preferences are still in place because, like I said, schools are not created equally. It's the funding. And there's no secret that in the United States, if you go to a majority white school, you're more than likely better funded than if you go to a historically Black college or university. It's not the ability of the student, it's the access to opportunity, right? So you can have the best ability, but if I put you in an environment where there is less funding, you got some HBCUs, the college campus hasn't changed in 50 years. If your mom went there, she still got the same, you got the same carpet, the same seats, the same auditorium. The building hasn't been renovated in 30 years. And you want them to be just as good as the people that have the state-of-the-art science classes, engineering classes, new buildings, new auditoriums, all the best technology. You're not going to get the same outcome. It's just what it is. So when we say, okay, we'll just go to our schools, we got to be very careful. I support HBCUs 100%. But what do we give up by saying it's all good? We won't try. There was a reason our forefathers fought to get into those mainstream schools anyway. They knew it provided a different level of access to success. Our numbers will go down, you guys. So we already have a problem, like I said, with Black professionals. We have better outcomes for Black people when they go to a Black physician. This has been documented. We're going to have less Black doctors. You don't believe me? This is the shift that we're having. It's monumental, guys. So not only are there less Black bodies in seats, so there are other students that don't get to interact with a Black student. I had several people at my college, which was predominantly white, tell me that they hadn't been friends with a Black person. They had never seen, like, they see Black people, but sit and chill and have lunch with, that was a unique experience for some of them for the first time at college. Because even though we say we are, 14%, a lot of places in our country are not urban. Actually, the majority of our country. And so everybody doesn't have the access to interacting, specifically in a positive way, except for on the news. So now we'll have less of those collision points in law schools, in undergraduate schools. School will become, if you go to HBCUs, more expensive for Black students. So what does that mean? You come out with more debt. And what does that do for your lifetime earning trajectory? We have to be really realistic about giving up, ceding this space. I don't want to cede it. I want our students, I want all of us at the table at the most elite schools in our country. So we at 5 and 8%, and now we're going to be at what? 2 to 3? All right, I'm off my soapbox. Let me get. Hey, Sir Hell Speaks. Good to see you. Let's talk about Candace Owens. She's just a rabble rouser. I think she is a conservative pundit. And I actually saw this off of the Shade Room. Shout out to the Shade Room. And this was a tweet that she made after this landmark decision. She said, imagine if the NBA declined LeBron James because there were, quote, too many Black people in the NBA. And they wanted racial diversity. So they instead allowed Ed Sheeran onto the Lakers in his place. This is not exactly, Candace, what this is a false equivalent. But I'm just going to read the quote. This is exactly what Asian Americans have been enduring for decades. That's not, ma'am. Let me finish reading the quote before I analyze it. Sorry, I was just trying to move myself from the screen to see the full quote. I'm not bothered by the fact that Black Americans dominate Asian and white Americans in basketball and football. We are simply better at those sports. Oh my goodness. And the players who train the hardest and therefore score the most points should play. This isn't complicated. Oh, ma'am. If white people would like to have greater presence in the NBA, then they're going to have to work at their jump shots, says Candace Owens. If Black people would like to have greater presence at Harvard, then they're going to have to work at their academics. This is not hard. Let me just tell you how flawed this thinking is, Ms. Owens. Yes, I mentioned this. There are going to be less women on campuses. People don't realize this. If ending, according to King Messiah, glad to have you, says, ending affirmative action affects white women the most. I thought 100%. 100%. It's going to go, we're talking about the racial component on campuses, but I do think there will also be a gender component when it comes to, if you're speaking strictly men versus women, that's definitely going to change a lot in the face. There are so many theories as to why I think they did this. But Ms. Owens her oversimplification of an athletic sport comparison is way off base. And there are people that will read her tweet and be like, oh yeah, that's right. See, we good at basketball. And they're not. They shouldn't have the advantage. When we're talking about academics, again, affirmative action only applies to people who are qualified and have a good baseline in terms of the other factors that are considered. What we are trying to address, or we're trying to address with affirmative action, is that there's often explicit bias and implicit bias of our systems, which prevent and preclude qualified minorities from ever getting a seat. So this is not about how your athletic ability and your physique is, ma'am. We have the academic prowess. But the years before affirmative action, we see how the makeup of the student body didn't include us, where we had the ability and the qualifications. So this is a false equivalent. When we're thinking about why we needed this in the first place, our system of so-called color blindness wasn't colorblind. The same amount of students could have been there that were Black, but there was no incentive, or some would argue a disincentive, to put them beside your daughter, your counterpart. There were people who did not actively want to see them in the top and elite schools in our country. No one can say this out loud. This was real. This is not basketball. We're keeping out Asians. No, ma'am. It's not about you and unique physical ability. Everybody has opportunity to be good in academics. We have been good at academics, but before, and we've seen it now, like I said, with the rollbacks, there is a system that doesn't necessarily look to us first, or even at all. Even if the child or the student has the ability, it would be much more difficult to end up at an elite university. That's why Clarence Thomas, that's why Michelle Obama, that's why Ketanji Brown Jackson had their opportunities, even though they had the ability. But these programs ensured, oh wait, somebody was looking their way. U.S. Supreme Court justices, Joanne Reed. If you don't force the hand to look at the full scope of y'all might have to go. My homeboy calling me. Full scope of those who have abilities, somehow Black folks get left out. Let me get rid of Miss Owens' commentary here, because it's gonna get on my nerves here. Let me get a few more comments, y'all. I'm actually supposed to meet somebody. It's July 4th weekend. Happy 4th. You guys might see me on the 4th if Gray Pill Podcast wants to collaborate. He reached out. I think we're going to do an Andrew Tate update next week for sure. I'm definitely going to do a Black in Business Wednesday. It'll be midday-ish, probably about 1:30. Y'all know I'm always on Roland Martin every Wednesday. I have a guest appearance slot on Faraji Muhammad's show called The Culture over on YouTube at the Roland Martin Network. If you don't know who he is, he's one of the top Black journalists and commentators when it comes to Black issues. He has over 1 million subscribers on YouTube, and I'm grateful. Our show, I was on there twice this week because of the Supreme Court. Wednesday's show, we have over 7,000 views. On Thursday's show, I had to come back because Farachi was like, Sue, can you please comment on what's going on in the Supreme Court? I'm like, of course. And we have over 10,000 views. The shows do very well. And it's very informative, and it comes from a unique perspective. But let me move forward. I'm going to read a few more of your comments, guys, and then head out. Patreon, you will see me. Hey, if you're a member of my members only community, missed you. I will be around again next week, and I'm going to a Democratic conference, and I'm going to go live from that conference. I am fired up and ready to go. This is not a sit back and watch people roll back people's rights. I'm going to talk about the 2 other cases real quick. Let me see what else you got to say. Miss AKA Lady says, what's wild is Candace probably has her job. Hello, somebody, because of some form of affirmative action. I think hiring a token. Jesus. Rosalind, give a girl to leave that alone. Thank you for your opinion. Rosalind, how are you? Says Candace Owens' barbecue invite was revoked a long time ago. Well, in basketball, they allowed less educated European players opportunity to play. Hello. All right, Andrea, I see where you're going with that. Hey, Miss Globe Girl, good to have you, sis. Says patiently waiting for the day when people like Candace Owens are dealt their cards that remind them. You always get reminded. Sis, that's deep. Thank you for saying that. Remind them of who they really are and where they come from. You want to play with it? What they say, mess around and find out. We never get to take this off. I just want to live. People are putting racial constructs around me, right? How I get a bank loan versus not being approved for a bank loan. Ketanji Brown Jackson, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson said it the best in her dissent, which is the losing opinion, if you will. They still write out why the majority opinion was wrong. She says, just because you remove a factor doesn't remove it from life. We're living the reality of lacks of opportunities and equal treatment under the law. And now you are creating an environment that is going to be less diverse, where we needed this diversity in the first place because we had to force them to start making it more diverse. And a diverse student body is a benefit to the society as a whole. But we gotta move on to the next case. Let me just touch on the web designer case and then quickly on the student loans. All right. Was there, okay, Chris, nice to have you again. Let me get your comment. He says, was there a system of checks and balances with African American? What I mean is, can we say for certain that it wasn't simply just used to give a passive yes, just asking, don't come for me? No. See, this is one of the biggest misnomers about affirmative action. And it has, I think, purposely been the boogeyman, right, for the public, for those who have been on the right trying to get rid of it because they see the successes behind it. Again, we have our first Black, right now, there are 2 Black Supreme Court justices who benefited from this because they had access to the best universities. Now, you could argue those 2 were already super qualified, super smart, and had the ability. But let me tell you what makes a big difference of what college you go to, the network that you come out with. Them Harvard people know each other, right? The Yale people, they look out. It's an inner circle of high achieving people, right? That have access to jobs, that have access to political power. You once you go to an Ivy, I pray I can one day have a child and get them to an Ivy. It transcends. Now you're in a whole different class of people. And I would argue it's too deep to go into, but the economic piece, are we going to basically allow only the richest Americans to control and to be the only people who can afford to get their kids into these universities? What do I mean? The amount of test prep, the amount of college prep courses and things like this. You are more likely to go to college if your parents went to college. You are more likely to get a graduate degree if your parents already had a second degree. So are we creating an upper class that also reflects only the rich? And I was reading, I think at Harvard, forgive me if I get this wrong, and I'll go back in the comments and correct it if I see a different stat, that if you look at what's going on, the bottom 20%, like, I don't want to get the number wrong, but it was saying that I don't want to say the wrong percentage, but a very high percentage of the super elite are who end up at our Ivies. So they are disproportionately, like the top 2.2 or even very high percentage of rich people, their kids are disproportionately at Ivies. And it's not by accident. So are we creating a super class, or like what looks self-fulfilling? Well, only white people are really successful. No, only white people have access. If I also had access with my good grades, with my ability, with my great GPA and my essay, let me add this. John Roberts, I was going to say this, left a little bit of a loophole for a student to be able to discuss race in their essay. He said if it had a reason to be mentioned as far as the student having, overcome odds or wanting to talk about their character or how they grew up, etc., you can still mention. It's forcing students basically to talk about race in a college essay when they might not otherwise have chosen to. We got to go. Let me get into it. Hey, Manjarel, how are you? Good to see you. Listen, we out here trying to get, I want to know what the plan is for Florida. That's what I'm going to the Democratic Conference. Patreon, once again, I will be live from Miami, but at a wonderful convention that's going to be happening to start preparing for 2024. So you already know what it is. Yes, we're pushing forward. Thank you, Ebony. Slow roll back. Let me introduce you to this lady. Her name is Lori, I believe it's Smith. She's a web designer for wedding websites in Colorado. And she brought a case that was also decided by the Supreme Court. Yes, Ebony, they are slowly rolling back all our hard-fought rights. As John Lewis, rest in peace, once said, the fight is not over, guys. There are places, again, it sounds great. It's colorblind. It's meritocracy. No, it's not. Anybody who grows up in America knows it's who you know. And your network determines your access. And there's so much more I can say about that first case, but we have to move on. So this lady sued, right, against the state of Colorado because Colorado has like an equal access provision for people doing businesses, that they have to treat everyone equally and that she must serve any and every customer. Now, this has been a basic law in the United States. We call it equal accommodation. That's the legal theory that no matter who you are, if you're a patron and client, you must be treated equally. This came about after the civil rights movement, which is equal rights for everybody. There was a time where in our country, not that long ago, Black people will serve you, but we'll serve you out the side door. We don't have you sit at the restaurant counter. Thank you very much. That's when we had our soldiers, our warriors of civil rights doing the sit-ins, getting hosed down, getting cussed at, spit at, and eventually, thanks to those images on television, the American public woke up. The conscious of our country was like, wait a minute, equal? That doesn't look equal to me, right? And it wasn't until Black students were allowed in predominantly white institutions that they realized, or they kind of knew before, but it was such a stark contrast with what the education institution around my corner looked like, the high school, the middle school, versus, all the old books, old desks. It affects the outcome for the individual and therefore the community. So when we look at this, I'm sorry, so switching back, but going into this case now. So this lady says she didn't want to serve a potential client, a possible client. He wasn't even a client yet, but she said she wanted to get a ruling on this prematurely, preemptively, in case, something like this occurred, because it goes against her free speech. She doesn't want to say this speech. She doesn't believe in a same-sex marriage. And our current Supreme Court, 6-3, ruled that she has a First Amendment interest. The government, the state of Colorado, telling her what to say. The First Amendment protects us from the government compelling us to say and support any message. So if she in her business creates a message, this is the thing, the business has to create expression. And they left it open. They thought they were making a unique carve out for just expression. To me, it opens up a Pandora's box to lawsuits and litigation. So by her coming out and saying, but I don't want to say something I don't agree with. Exactly, Miss Globe Girl, let them know. So-called less qualified Blacks. You couldn't survive in an Ivy League. Give me a break. African American was simply affirmative action was simply extending opportunity to the best of the best. People don't realize that because, again, the pop culture spin, this is bad. Good white people are losing their spots for these underqualified Black people. This is what the narrative has been. It's crazy. When I got to my PWI, I looked them in the face. This is my GPA. This is my SAT. I'm in the honors program. Run tell that. How about that? I didn't play. They can't come for me. I'm smarter than you. I don't mean to be like that in a haughty way, but no, I could see it. Oh, do you know how to do calculus? Oh, yeah, I do. Thanks. Yes. It was really, I never got it touched in my face like a psh. But I know when you know when the temperature change and people, hey, I wonder if you're going to be able to, sir, I'm going to get a higher grade than you. It's wild that people feel entitled to a seat. I got to come off of that affirmative action. Let me move forward. Come on. As I said, so basically in this outcome here, yeah, you ask this question again and how he got into his grad school, Wharton. I can't even. Thank you, Jeff, for that question. Y'all do the research. So basically now the Supreme Court, in its majority opinion, 6-3, has now told this lady, you have a First Amendment right to not be told by the state of Colorado what you must say. And because your business is that of an expressing a thought, an idea, web design is an expression of belief. You're not compelled to serve a person that you deem has a separate or a different belief from you. If the person goes against your religious beliefs. Now, what would stop this? This is what is scary about this, y'all. From this being applied to any class of people. Right now, it's LGBTQ, and I know that's controversial because a lot of people in the Black community have mixed feelings. I can't say that out loud. I'm going to say it out loud. I don't judge the people. They're, to me, also made by God. How they live their life, that's between them and God. I don't believe anybody should be discriminated against, though. I don't. How can you look at one class of people? If we're talking about, we just had this whole discussion about equity, equal treatment under the law. And in business, we've had an established doctrine of accommodation across the board, equal accommodation for any patron. Because people used to be able to say, oh, you're this, I don't serve you. Oh, you're interracial, I don't serve you. What would stop someone else from saying, I don't believe in, say, for example, interracial marriage? And that was written in the minority opinion, in the dissent. What would stop this from being another class? You can now say, maybe if it's a painting, you want to do a painting at a wedding. Oh, no, it's an LGBTQ wedding. I don't want to do it. Here go your money. There's a slippery slope for this, guys. Very slippery. You got to look at this case with a bigger lens. If I can now justifiably forget how you feel about that one class, if I can have a business in America say, I don't serve you, what prevents a precedent of being set for other people, other protected classes? Oh, we don't believe in fill in the blank. Oh, they wrote in the majority opinion. Well, if it's a conservative, it doesn't have to just be Christian, a conservative, Muslim, or someone else, and they don't support this. They shouldn't have to. There has always been the doctrine of, if you're doing business in America, you serve everybody. You don't have to personally agree with how they live, how they think, how they dress. But as a paying patron, this is going to have an impact on commerce. And where does it end? Y'all got to look at this case. Lori Smith was the plaintiff, or the person that brought the lawsuit, objects to same-sex marriage, and told the court she should not, according to Colorado law, be made to make a website for gay people because she has a First Amendment. It's basically forcing her into speech. Colorado is telling her to speak about or to produce a product that is expressive that she don't agree with. This is a very precedent-setting case that I don't think people understand. Don't get caught up in the LGBT. Think about what the premise is. One group of people can be denied service because I can say I have a religious objection to you as a business owner. Remember our history when people used to be able to put up signs outside and say, don't come here, we don't serve you. This is a serious case. And I implore you guys to look at it. I got to go. Let me read a few more comments. Is there just for profit for companies? I'm assuming nonprofits, churches wouldn't be able to require marriage outside of their beliefs. No, I think they don't have it. They don't have a requirement now if it's a religious organization. I don't think they have a requirement. That's why we have certain churches. Even me, I grew up in the Methodist church. There's like a split happening right now. Thousands of churches, some staying because I think the people who stay are now in support of in the United Methodist congregations across this country, allowing gay ministers, allowing gay marriage. And then you have people who are forming a new communion. I'm talking about millions of people are starting a new almost subset of Methodists because they don't have to. They don't have to. The religious side does not have to. I'm talking about business. You selling a product. This used to be common where people would say, I don't sell to your type. I don't sell to you. And we got that ironed out. And now here we are, revisiting it and rolling back. It's really deep, guys. You have to look at this case very sharply. This one hurt me. I was like, whoa, they just allowed a business to say, I don't want to serve you on the grounds of free speech. It's a very interesting threading the needle, not on the grounds of strictly religious right, but on the grounds of saying, you are forcing me to agree with you in my expression. So I'm thinking about what businesses would this apply to, because it's not businesses across the board, businesses that are expressive in nature. We're going to go into it. I might have to do a part 2 to this, y'all. I really got to go. Mandrell says it's okay to tell them that you're smarter than them, especially when it's true and they think they're better than you. You've earned it. Listen, I caught up a couple egos was busted. Like, what you think this is? But people are used to thinking of themselves as being superior. And now this will almost be reinforced because you're only going to see more and more exclusive campuses where majority of students are white. So you think, oh, we only are the ones that belong here. No, now we have exclusionary policy because that's what we had before. That's why we created the programs to at least open the door to qualified people. But now everybody's going to be white. So see, this is how it should always be. We are the smartest. We are the best. We are the highest earners in the country. We control the wealth of the country for generation to generation. See, it's all equal. I never had a chance to get into that same university in the first place. What are you talking about? But think about think about how the country will look coming up. I gotta go. I can't even get into the all right, guys. We might have to do a part 2. Y'all gonna catch me live next week. As soon as I put up the streams, I will make sure to put it on my community tab in YouTube. If you're watching on the Facebook side, go over to YouTube, look up SuzetteSpeaks. I gotta go, guys. I have somebody waiting on me. Between the constant nonsense, baby. I could just do a Florida. I was thinking about doing that, saying to be new laws in Florida can be its own show. It's July 1st. In Florida, that's when all the new laws go into effect. So they're passed, but they don't go into effect until July 1st. There's so much. I don't even want to get into it. Sandy, I might just do a law. I just might do a quick rundown of all the new laws that have been passed and their effect on Floridians. We know we've talked about open carry. Before, you had to have training and a license and a background check for concealed carry. As of today, oh my goodness gracious. Now, funding for diversity, equity, and inclusion programs has been denied as of today for colleges and universities, except we're federally mandated. But Ron DeSantis has signed that bill. Gone. When I think about, there's like 6 major Florida laws I've been kind of following. So look up this one. Look up the lady, Lori Smith is her name. Affirmative action case. Like I said, when I looked at what happened even at the loan forgiveness, I don't even know if this case should have been brought. Like we call it premature. It's not ripe yet. Yeah, we might have to do a Florida law case. This is how I feel, y'all. I'm about to go. I'll laugh to keep from crying. Rollbacks is right. Yes. I see you. Out here trucking. Why would you support a business that doesn't support you? That's probably what we're going to have to do. Like the public marketplace will have to push these people out of business. But then there are going to be other people that really support these people that have this mentality. Yes, Ebony, remember former President Bush got into 2 Ivies with C grades because guess what? Legacy. Please do the Florida show. Okay, because I was looking at, I'm like, today is the day. July 1st is when all these crazy regulations in Florida go into effect. That's when all our laws, y'all, this is who get the last laugh, y'all. All right, you guys want the Florida show? Okay, cool. I'll be live most likely on July 4th. Most likely for sure on next Wednesday, probably around 1:30. I have a wonderful lady that's going to talk about Black business, like good techniques for our entrepreneurs. And we getting back into a rhythm, y'all. Work with me. I'll be at a Democratic convention next week. And I want to cover that. I'll probably do a little live here, but I'll mostly do it on my Patreon and talk about what we're really talking about as we gather. Because this right here, it's unacceptable. It is not done yet. Because like I said, these justices are young. They have the potential to keep reshaping American society and who has access to the opportunities for success. Higher education to me is just the first stop. I can't even go into it. All right. Yes, Jeff King said, I live in Florida. We have a crazy government. You too. Miami represent. Hey, good to see you, Black Lexicon. How are you? Glad to have you. T Replay. Go ahead and hit the like button. We'll have to be continued. This is Sandy B saying, hey, they should remove legacies. Listen, them people not going to let y'all. That's how they know they going to get in, and they kids that are, borderline going to get in. Write the check. Name on the building. No matter what, you'll have your seat. Nobody questions you. Or should they? I don't know, y'all. This is a deep, what should I say, restructuring, a shift that is like we think in 5-10 years, these people thinking in 30, 40, 50 years. Maybe we've come too far. What you say, Andrew? Too much opportunity, too much progress? Y'all, I got to go. Bye. I appreciate you tuning in. Hit the like button on your way out. Thank you so much for watching. Again, the conversation is to be continued. If you're watching on the Facebook side, go over to YouTube. Please find me, SuzetteSpeaks, and go ahead and hit the subscribe button if you want to support. Finally, the stream, the Cash App is there. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thanks for your patience. We are rolling, though. We are rolling. Next Saturday, we'll be live from the conference. I don't know. Maybe I could grab an interview with some party people, meaning Democratic Party people, for what is their plan for Florida. That's what I really want to know. We have too much at stake. I get frustrated just even thinking about it. You guys, I love you. Take care. Enjoy your 4th. Be safe. Again, I'll let you know if I'm going live on the 4th with Gray Pill. If not, definitely Wednesday, 1:30. Again, Rebecca will be with me. She's an accountant and business consultant and coach, and we're getting back in our rhythm. All right. Love and respect. Big up Jamaicans.com. My co-sponsors today. All of you for watching. Again, hit the like button on your way out. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you as always for watching, and I will see you soon. You too. Have a great weekend. Have a nice one, y'all. I see more comments coming through, but hey, world class. Let me see. What up? Good to see you, brother. Happy that you're here, but we are out. All right. Have a great July 4th, and I will see you again soon. Thanks for watching.